So let's talk about these five moral dimensions a little more. The information rights and obligations looks at what information rights do individuals and organizations possess with respect to themselves and what can they protect. With the property rights and obligations, how will traditional intellectual property rights be protected in a digital society in which tracing and accounting for ownership are difficult and ignoring such property rights is so easy? In accountability and control, we can think about who can and will be held accountable and liable for the harm done to individual and collective information and property rights. For the system quality, what standards of data and what standards of system quality should we demand to protect individual rights and the safety of society? On the quality of life, what values should be preserved in an information and knowledge based society? Which institutions should we protect from violations? Which cultural values and practices does the new information technology support? Those are the five moral dimensions of the information age. The key technology trends that raise ethical issues are computing power doubles every 18 months. This is Moore's law, Moores law. And according to Moore, who predicted long back that the computing power will double every 18 months. So, what does this do to us? Computing power doubling every month gives you faster capacities. You have better operation systems. And these can be used for greatness as well as some ethical issues as well. Most organizations depend on computer systems for critical operations, and they become more vulnerable to system failures if they cannot cope up with this computing power. That is the problem. The next one is data storage costs rapidly decline. Organizations can maintain detailed databases on individuals. There are no limits on the data collected about you. So, for instance, when you go to Google, the data analysis advances has vast quantities of data gathered on individuals to develop detailed profiles. For instance, when you go to Google and you want to buy something, that is taken over by tracking softwares which are inside your computer, and it goes to Amazon. Then Google actually sells them. And this is with Amazon, this is with Facebook, this is with any software that you have. All these companies take the individuals' names, addresses, or telephone numbers, whatever it is, or email addresses, or IP addresses, and then they sell it. So what happens is that then other companies can do a target advertising for you. So if you go to Google and type, let's say, nutrition supplement, and then the next day when you open up an MSN page, or when you open Amazon, when you open anywhere else, nutrition supplements will be shown. And this is hard marketing, and this is targeted marketing. So data analysis advances sell your data without your knowledge. Is that ethical? Networking advances are pretty much helping you, benefiting you. But the cost of moving data and making it accessible for anywhere fails exponentially, actually. And then access to these data becomes more and more difficult as time wears out. In the mobile devices, there is an explosion. And this growth of mobile devices have truly impacted many things. Individual cell phones may be tracked without your content or knowledge. The problem is that the mobile phones or mobile devices are always on, and they becomes like a tether to these advertising or to whatever you do. So you need to think about all these things when we think about ethical issues. So we talked about profiling. Profiling is combining data with multiple sources to create dossiers of detailed information on individuals. Then we have what is called NORA, non-obvious relationship awareness. This combines data from multiple sources and finds obscure hidden connections that might help identify criminals or terrorists. For instance, NORA is pretty good in the sense that when used really well, suppose I go to, uh, you know, like an airport, and I meet an old friend of mine. We exchange telephone numbers or email addresses. And that old friend of mine can be, let's say, a terrorist. Then the people who are in charge of all these things, the Homeland Security guys, can come to me or come after me to get to know how I know that person and all that stuff. That's what non obvious relationship awareness is. So, in these non obvious relationship awareness, you have watch lists, you have incident and arrest systems, you have customer transaction systems, your telephone records, you have human resources systems. All these are pulled into a database, and these are standardized names, matches, and merges are done so that alerts can be done for Homeland Security or anybody else. And that's how NORA, the non obvious relationship awareness, works. The basic concepts of ethics would be responsibility, accountability, and liability. And we all know this. Responsibility is accepting the potential costs, duties, and obligations for any decision that you make. Accountability is mechanisms for identifying who are the responsible parties. Liability permits individuals like you and me, or firms or institutions, to recover damages done to them. In summary, laws are known and in some cases well known. Laws are understood and in some cases very well understood so that we can appeal to higher other authorities. There is a 5 step process for ethical analysis. One is to identify and clearly describe the facts. Two is define the conflict or dilemma and identify the higher order values which are involved. Three, identify the stakeholders. Four, identify all the options that you can reasonably take or undertake. Five, identify the potential consequences of your options. So these 5 step process can be used for any ethical analysis. In fact, when you do the eyes for this class, I want you to use these 5 step process as well as the 5 moral dimensions. There are some ethical principles that we have. One is the golden rule that do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That is a good old golden rule. The second one is when Immanuel Kant, the philosopher, said, if an action is not right for everyone to take, it is not right for anyone. Then there is a slippery slope rule that we always talk about. If an action cannot be taken repeatedly, it is not right to take at all. And those are the ethical principles that we know pretty well. There are other things, other rules that we can think of. One is the utilitarian principle, which says that take the action that achieves the higher or greater value. There is also a risk aversion principle that takes the action that produces the least harm or potential cost. And there is the good old rule saying there is no free lunch. It assumes that all tangible and intangible objects are owned by someone unless there is a specific declaration otherwise. There are professional codes of conduct for these to tackle these ethical issues. The American Medical Association, the American Bar Association, the Association for Computing Machinery, which we are interested in, they all have professional codes of conduct. This is basically to regulate themselves and their society members in the general interest of society. So, in the real world ethical dilemmas, one set of interests fights against another set of interests. The example can be Facebook. Facebook monitors users, whatever you write in the Facebook, whatever people write in Facebook. Facebook actually looks at them, they monitor them. They sell that information to advertisers as well as to application developers so that they can use it. And that's how one of the ways of revenue generation in Facebook. So let's talk about privacy. And privacy is a claim of individuals to be left alone, free from surveillance, free from interference from other individuals, free from surveillance or interference from other organizations or state or the government, and the claim to be able to control information about yourself. That is privacy. For instance, if you visit a doctor, nobody but you should know what went on between you and the doctor. That is privacy. In the United States, privacy is protected by the First Amendment, which talks about freedom of speech and association. The Fourth Amendment, which is the unreasonable search and seizure. And also there are certain additional federal statutes, which are Privacy Acts of 1974. There is also Electronic Communications Privacy Act of 1986, the Computer Society Act of 1987, Computer Matching and Privacy Protection Act of 1988, the E-Government Acts of 2002, the Fair Credit Reporting Act of 1970, Right to Financial Privacy Act of 1978, the Privacy Protection Act of 1980, the Electronic Communications Privacy Act of 1986, and the Video Privacy Protection Act of 1988 are few of them. We'll also be talking about few more, or specifically 3 more acts in the next slide. So, to use or to drive changes in privacy legislation, we have 3 acts. One is the COPPA, the other one is the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act, the third one is the HIPAA. So each one of them has a definite way of looking into things in terms of privacy. The COPPA, which is the US Congress passing of Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, requires websites to obtain parental permission before collecting information on children under the age of 13. So we know that. The second one is the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act, which was enacted in 1999, repeals earlier restrictions on affiliations among banks, security firms, and insurance companies, including some privacy